Oh my god, is it war? Everywhere you look right now, missiles, breaking news, global tension. Headlines are screaming about conflict. Markets are reacting. People are worried. This is one hell of a scary situation. Let me ask you something. When you hear words like war, recession, economic crisis, what is the first thing people immediately start saying? What is going to happen to home prices, right? You hear it everywhere, on the news, on social media, at family dinners, even from friends who suddenly become housing experts overnight. But here is something very few people realize. Almost every major housing prediction during global uncertainty has historically been wrong. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why. Because the real relationship between war, recession, and home prices is very different from what most people believe. And if you're planning to buy, sell, or invest in real estate anytime in the next few years, understanding this could save you from making a very expensive mistake. Stay with me because the most surprising part of this conversation happens when we look at what actually happened in history. Before we go further, quick movement. If you appreciate clear explanation about the housing market, not hype, not panic, just real insight, take a second to like the video and subscribe the channel. It helps more buyers and homeowners find this information when they are trying to make important decisions. And if you ever need guidance personally, the links to connect with me along with buyer and seller resources are always in description. All right, let's talk about something most people never look at: history. Because history tells us something fascinating about housing. When global events shake the economy, real estate does not always behave the way people expect. And in some cases, it behaves in the complete opposite way. Let's start with a war. Now, this is where many people assume the housing market could collapse. After all, war creates uncertainty. Markets become volatile. Government spend enormous amount of money, and the global economy becomes unpredictable. So logically, many people assume housing would crash during these periods. But when economists actually studied housing data across major wars, including World War II, Gulf War, and several modern conflicts, something surprising appeared. Home prices did not collapse. In many cases, they continued rising. And this is the part most people miss. Housing demand does not disappear simply because the world becomes unstable. People still get married, families still grow, people still relocate for jobs. And in many situations, war spending actually stimulates parts of the economy. Now, that doesn't mean housing market booms every time there is a global conflict, but the idea that war automatically destroys housing markets is simply not supported by history. And that realization alone already changes a lot of popular assumptions. Now, let's talk about recession because this is where the conversation becomes more nuanced. When people hear the word recession, many immediately think of one event: 2008. But here is the important thing: 2008 wasn't a normal recession, it was a housing driven financial crisis. That distinction matters more than most people realize. Since 1960s, the United States has experienced multiple recessions. And when economists looked at housing prices during those periods, something very interesting appeared again. In most recessions, housing prices did not crash. They slowed, they flattened, sometimes they dipped slightly. But dramatic price collapses were extremely rare. The reason 2008 looked so different was because the housing market itself was source of the crisis. Lending standards were extremely loose. People were buying homes with almost no income verification. Investors were flipping properties with heavy leverage. And when those loans started failing, the financial system unraveled. That created the housing collapse many people still remember today. But outside of that unique moment, housing has historically been far more resilient than people assume. Now, let's bring this conversation to today because the structure of today's housing market is very different from the one that existed before 2008. And this is where many people misunderstand the current environment. First, lending standards today are much stricter. Buyers go through full financial verification. Second, millions of homeowners are sitting on a very low mortgage rates from previous years, which means many homeowners have very little motivation to sell. And third, the United States is still dealing with a significant housing shortage. For more than a decade, the country has built fewer homes than population growth requires. That shortage creates something very important, a supply imbalance. And supply is one of the strongest forces influencing housing prices. When supply is limited, prices tend to remain more stable, even during uncertain economic periods. But uncertainty does influence something else, human behavior. And behavior plays a powerful role in real estate. When the economy becomes uncertain, buyers often pause, not because they can't buy, but because they want clarity. They want to see what interest rates will do. They want to see what the job market will do. They want to see how the economy settles. So activity slows. Homes may take longer to sell. Negotiations become more balanced. But a slower market is not the same thing as a collapsing market. And this is exactly where many people confuse cooling with crashing. They're not the same thing. Let me share something I see happening repeatedly. When headlines become dramatic, buyers start expecting prices to fall immediately. So they decide to wait. 6 months later, prices haven't moved very much, but interest rates have changed, and suddenly the monthly payment is higher. That's where many buyers realize something important. Housing decisions are rarely about predicting the perfect moment. They are about understanding long-term positioning because real estate is typically a long-term asset. People buy homes for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 20 years or more. And over those time horizons, short-term market fluctuations matter far less than people think. Now, if you are a homeowner watching this, the key question becomes different. Instead of asking, is the market going to crash? The better question is, how prepared is my home if I decide to sell? Because the markets reward well prepared properties, even when conditions shift. Clean presentation, smart pricing, strong marketing, professional negotiation, those factors continue to matter regardless of economic headlines. If you are a buyer, the conversation becomes more strategic. You don't need to rush, but you also shouldn't assume the market will suddenly hand you a dramatic discount. The real advantage buyers gain during uncertain market is leverage, less competition, more time to evaluate properties, better negotiating positions, and sometimes builder incentives or seller concessions. Those opportunities appear when the market cools slightly, but they don't usually appear during full panic because in housing, panic rarely lasts long. Now, let me leave you with a thought that experienced investors understands very well. The biggest real estate opportunities rarely appears when everyone feels confident. They appear when uncertainty enters the market because uncertainty changes behavior. When everyone feels uncomfortable, competition becomes intense. But when people hesitate, the field opens up. And that's when thoughtful buyers and strategic sellers often make their most effective moves. So the next time you hear someone say, war is coming, recession is coming, housing is about to crash, pause for a moment because the housing market is far more complex than headlines suggest. History shows something important. Real estate tends to move slowly. It adjusts, it recalibrates, but rarely behaves in the dramatic ways people expect. If this conversation helped you understand the market a little more clearly, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe the channel. And if you are planning a move, whether it's buying, selling, or relocating, the links in the description include my buyer and seller resources guides along with the direct way to connect with me. I'm always happy to help, and I'll see you guys in the next video.